Okay, so we're holding today on Daf Samach Tet Amud Bet, and we're holding 69 BU1. 69B1, Samach Tet Amud Bet, about 7 lines from the top. Tanu Banan in English on the right column. Tanu Banan, bottom paragraph. So last week we ended off talking about some of the laws of a 3-year-old girl who, if you had relations with a person, have relations with her, would be considered full-fledged relations. And so now to contrast with the boy, Tanu Banan, as we start, Tanu Banan HaMisolelet. Okay? So HaMisolelet Bivana Katan. If a woman is messing around, she's playing around with her son, who is a Katan. Ve'eraba. And he initiates intimate contact, right? Throughout Shas, Machokas, what He'ara is it that the genitalia become in contact, or is it the beginning of penetration? Right? I think we learned that the halach of the Rambam was that it's the beginning of penetration. If I remember correctly, I have to double check, but I believe that's what the Rambam paskin. The hara is the beginning of penetration. So she's playing with her young boy, and their genitalia contact, or the beginning of penetration, whichever way is halacha beishamay oimrim. If such a thing happened, then pesela min hakihuna. This mother that was playing with her young boy and ended up in such a contact, she becomes pasul from the kihuna. She's now classified like a zona because she had intimate relations with someone who's not her husband, someone who is ayot to her, forbidden to her, and she becomes the pasul. Therefore, she can no longer eat from the truma. Ubet Hillel, but Bet Hillel says machshirin no, she had this he'ara, this contact with the katan, she still remains kosher for teruma. Why is this? So Amar bihiyah bered Rabab Nachmani Amar Hizda. Va'amre le Amar Hizda Amar Zeiri. Hakomodim, everyone agrees. Beven tesha shani v'yom echad shebi'ato bi'ah. Everybody agrees that a 9-year-old boy who has intercourse, who has relations with a woman, his relations is considered a relations, considered bi'ah. And everyone agrees if he's less than 8 years old, that if he had relations, it's not considered anything. It's not considered legal halachic relations. Well, this case of machloket is when the boy is 8 years old. Apparently, the machloket of his relations that he has, intercourse that he has, is considered halachically significant, or it's not. The Bet Shammai Savrei. Gamrin and Midot Rishonim. Since we find in the Bible, find in the Torah, in the Tanakh, that an 8-year-old boy had a child, so we see that it's possible for 8-year-olds to have children. So therefore, we have to assume that 8-year-olds bi'ah is considered a real bi'ah. Ubet Hillel Savrei, Lo Gamrin and Midot Rishonim. We don't learn from previous generations. We look at the reality today. And the Talmud was saying, in the times of the Talmud, we learned already that boys weren't able to become fathers until they were 13, right? And they had 2 pubic hairs that came out. Then they maybe can impregnate a woman. So therefore, he says we don't say an 8-year-old can do it. A 9-year-old, okay, we'll say even though he cannot be impregnate a woman, but a 9-year-old's bi'ah is considered a bi'ah. But 8 years old, no, cannot be. That's the mahloket. Mahloket is, do we learn from the Dirot Rishonim, the early generations, that an 8-year-old intercourse is legal and it can work and it can father a child? But we don't learn from it. We learn from the reality today. Right. Right. So the boy could inseminate a woman when he's 9. However, that 9 doesn't produce a child. Remember, we had that Gemara last week. But until then, the Beit Hillel will say that there is no legal significance to their intercourse. So now Beit Shammai said we have a Torah source, somewhere in Tanakh, that an 8-year-old boy had a child. So the question is, where was this? Where do we see this in the Dorot Rishonim, the early generations, that an 8-year-old had a child? If you say it's from Shlomo HaMelech, so very interesting over here. We're gonna have to hold our heads in the calculations of how we get to an 8-year-old. Let's see. Halo Zod Bat Sheva was Bat Eliam. She was the daughter of a man named Eliam. Eshet Uriah Hiti, and she was the original wife of Uriah Hiti. Okay, so we know that Bat Sheva is the daughter of a man named Eliam. That's what you need to know from that pasuk. Uchtiv, and then it says Eliam ben Achitofel Hagiloni, and Eliam was the son of Achitophel. You remember Achitophel was one of the advisors of David HaMelech. So he was the grandfather of Bathsheba, or that would mean he would be the great grandfather of Shlomo HaMelech. Okay, so it would be now starting from Achitophel, had a son Eliam. Eliam had a daughter Bathsheba. Bathsheba had a son Shlomo HaMelech. So 4 generations. Okay. Right, and they called his name Yedidya. It was another name of Shlomo HaMelech. Ba'avor ki Hashem ahavo. Name Yedidya for Hashem love. Okay, fine. Okay. Uchtiv. Now comes the calculation. So we know that Shlomo HaMelech is Bathsheba's son. Bathsheba is the daughter of Eliam. Eliam is the son of Achitophel. Now, Uchtiv, and it says, that it was 2 years. The Pasukim right after tell us 2 years later, Avshalom kills Amnon. Remember the whole story with Amnon? We already dealt with the story earlier. Amnon, he tricks his half sister, and he sleeps with her, and then he banishes her. And Avshalom is the brother of Tamar, and he wants to take revenge, and eventually he kills Amnon in this 2nd year after Shlomo Melech is born. Okay, but he lives 9 times he goes in Avshalom. And then it says Avshalom barach v'yelech v'hisham shlosh. Now Avshalom is in exile for 3 years. So Shlomo Melech is 2 years old when Amnon is killed. 3 years now passed when Avshalom is in exile. So Shlomo Melech is now 5. Uchtiv, Avshalom Yerushalayim Shenatayim Yamim Pnei Melech Lo Ra'ah. And then he comes back to Yerushalayim for 2 years, but he never sees David Melech's face. Uchtiv, and then it says V'himi Kates Arba'im Shanavi Avshalom LaMelech. And then it was at the end of 40 years that Avshalom asked the king, I want to go to Hebron. Right? And what happens there? First of all, what 40 years? Right? There's no 40 years of David Melech's reign that this could have happened. It's what it means over here that take a look at note 19. Section details how Avshalom went to Hebron under the pretense of fetching animals. Once there, he declared his rebellion against King David. Right? This is when the rebellion starts. This took place in the 36th or 37th year of King David's reign. The 40 years mentioned in this verse cannot refer to the years of that reign. Rather, the verse is counting from the date the Jewish people demanded Shmuel appoint a king. Hence, Avshalom's rebellion took place 40 years after this demand, or 2 years after his return to Jerusalem, and was thus 7 years old when the revolt began. So the 40 years is not from David's reign. Rather, it is from when they asked Shmuel for a king. And the relation is that, what's the connection? Why it says 40 years and not 37 years from King David's reign? Because just the way the Navi says that when they asked Shmuel for a king, Shmuel said, you're being Morid b'Malchus, you're going against Hashem. Hashem is your king. Right? It's the same thing here. Avshalom is about to go against David, so it's counting from the time when the Jews went against Hashem, a rebellion. So anyway, he starts a rebellion after 2 years. Okay? So he 2 years after Shlomo Melech was born, he kills Amnon. 3 years he's in exile. 2 years he comes back, and then he starts the rebellion. How old is Shlomo Melech at this time? He is 7. Now, it says that Achitophel gave him advice. He told him, keep chasing your father and kill him. Remember, Achitophel said this. Now, Achitophel, if you think about it, it's not David Melch's father-in-law, but it's David Melch's grandfather-in-law, right? Bathsheba's father is Eliam. Eliam's father is Achitophel, so it's his grandfather-in-law. His grandfather-in-law is advising one of David's sons, right, to kill David Melech. And when he gives him this advice, for whatever reason, Absalom doesn't listen. Achitophel realizes that that Absalom was not following his advice, and he knows that that it became known that he sided with Absalom. So that means if David Melech survives and wins, he's going to be killed for Morid b'Malchus, right? And if he gets killed by the king, then all his possessions go to the king, and he wanted his possessions not to go to the king. So what did he do? By he went to his house, his city, and he commanded his house what to do. And he strangled himself. He committed suicide. And so we see that Achitophel, the great grandfather of Shlomo HaMelech, killed himself when Shlomo HaMelech was 7 years old. This is the facts on the ground. We have Shlomo HaMelech, the son of Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the son of Absalom, of Achitophel. Okay, we also know that Shlomo HaMelech was 7 years old when Achitophel killed himself. Now we have another pasuk. People of bloodshed and deceit will not live out half their days. Betanya, and we learned, what does this mean? What's this pasuk and tell mean? That half the days of a regular person, people who live 70 years, half of it is 35. And we're saying people of deceit and bloodshed don't even live half of that. So Betanya, all the years of Doeg, who was Doeg? Doeg was another advisor. He told Shaul that the Nov, Kohanim, were siding with David Melech, and then Shaul said, go and kill them, and he went and he killed the Kohanim. Right? Bad guy. Even though he was a big Talmid Chacham. But he only lived 34 years old. And Achitophel, and we have a tradition that Achitophel died at 33. So at 33, he was dead, right? Because he could have lived only to 34, and he killed himself, so he must have killed himself a little early. So he was 33, says the Yad Ramah. Fine. So that's what we know. We know that Achitophel killed himself at 33. So how many years Achitophel lived? 33. Dal Sheva Dahava Shlomo. Now, Shlomo Melech was how old when Achitophel killed himself? Shlomo Melech was 7. So let's minus 33 from 7. That means Pashluhu Isrim Vishit. He was 26 years old when Shlomo HaMelech was born. He was a great grandfather at 26. So how do you manage that? How do you become a great grandfather at 26? So it says, take away 2 more years for 3 pregnancies, 8-month pregnancies. So 8, it's about 2 years. Okay, a little more than 2 years. You don't have to be exact. Each one gave birth when they were 8 years old. Take a look at note 26. When Achitophel was 8 years and 8 months old, his son Eliam was born. 8 years and 8 months later, Bathsheba was born, making Achitophel 17 and 4 months at the time of her birth. After another 8 and 8 months, when Achitophel was exactly 26 years old, Bathsheba gave birth to Shlomo HaMelech. So they were all 8 years old. 8 years old was Achitophel. 8 years old was Eliam. 8 years old was Bathsheba. So we have proof that they were 8s. Their boys at 8 were able to father a child in the Dorot HaRishonim. The Gemara said, what? Memai? How do you know this is the truth? Dilma Tarvayu Betisha Olid. Perhaps the males, Eliam and Achitophel, had children when they were 9, not 8. Uvat Sheva Olid Beshit. But Batsheva, girls mature faster. They're able to have children when they're younger. Mashum de itata bariyam, because they have more vitality. And they're able to procreate at a younger age. That's why their bi'ah 3 is already considered a bi'ah. So you don't have no proof that they were 8. Perhaps they were 9 and Batsheva was 6. Today you should know this is also true. Because the Tanakh tells us that Batsheva actually had a son before Shlomo Melech. He died, but she had a son, right? So she was able to give birth before before 8, if you calculate 8 at 8. So the fact that she was able to have before 8 must be that she was 6, and they were at least both 9. So you don't have any proof that a boy's bi'ah at 8 was ever Dorot Rishonim in the early generations able to father a child from this proof. You don't have. Interesting to come out that Achitofel, I didn't know this until I learned this Gemara, that Achitofel was the great grandfather of Shlomo Melech. A very, very interesting fact. Okay. So now we're going to prove it from somewhere else. Where else are we going to prove it from? Elam mehacha. Here we have a proof that an 8-year-old was able to father a child at some point in history. How do we know? It says, Ela tolodot terach. Terach holid Abraham et Nachor bet Haran. It says in the parsha that, it says in the Torah that Terach had children. Abraham, Nachor, Haran. But Abraham gadol min Nachor shana. Now Abraham was at least a year older, about a year older than Nachor. But Nachor gadol min Haran shana. And Nachor is at least a year older than Haran. And Nimsa Abraham gadol shnei shenim Haran. So it turns out that Abraham is at least 2 years older than Haran. Uchtiv yikach Abraham v'Nachor lehem nashim. And Abraham and Nachor took wives. Right? If you want to continue the pasuk in the Torah or Shalom Chav, Shem Eshet Abraham Sarai, Shem Eshet Nachor, Milka Bat Haran. They were both the children of Haran, Abi Milka, Abi Yiska, and Haran was the father of Milka and Yiska. So Gemara says, it digresses for a moment. Who's this Yiska? Yiska Zu Sarah. Yiska is Sarah. There's actually people today I know named Yiska. We have a girl in one of my daughter's class named Yiska. Yiska's name is actually Sarah's name. Why was she called Yiska? The word Yiska comes from Socha, that she was able to gaze at Ruach HaKodesh. And whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her voice. Why does it say to her voice? She said, listen to Sarah. No, you know why I listen to her voice? Because she has Ruach HaKodesh. Right? You don't listen to every woman. You don't listen to every woman that says something. Right? You listen to someone who has Ruach HaKodesh, says Hashem to Abraham. Shema bekola. So you know she had Ruach HaKodesh. Davar acher, another reason why she's called Yiska, she'akol sachim beyofya. She was so beautiful that everybody was gazing at her extraordinary beauty. Okay, so what do we know? We know that Abraham is a year older than Nachor. Nachor is a year older than Haran. So Abraham is 2 years older than Haran. That's what we want to say right now. Okay, now it comes and it says, as we continue, and Abraham fell on his face, he laughed, and he said in his heart, and the pasuk continues, what did he say? Halaven me'ashana, can it be 100-year-old man, Eva live to have birth? Ve'im Sarah habat tish'im shana tolet, and Sarah, who is 90, can give birth? Now, kama kashish Abraham Sarah. How much older was Abraham than Sarah? So we see Eser Shanim. He was 100, she was 90. Okay. Now, Bekashish me'avuha 13 shanim. And now, take away 2 years, was 2 years older than Haran. Remember, Abraham married Sarai. Sarai is 10 years difference than Abraham. So, how old was Haran when he had her? So, Ishtachak Yola Haran Saran Betamne Olida. That Haran was 8 years old. Was 8 years old when he had Sarah. Right? Take a look at all 36. Haran was at least 16 months younger than Abraham, which means that he was 8 years and 8 months old when Sarah was born. since we allow 8 months per pregnancy, emerged that Haran was 8 years old when he had Sarah. Others say no, he was exactly 8 years old when Sarah was born. All right, and so turns out that we have here a case of Haran being 8 years old and he was able to father a child. Okay, right. So because Abraham, remember, is 10 years older than Sarah. So Abraham is 10 years older. So that means he was Abraham was 10 when Sarah was born. But Haran is 2 years younger than Abraham. So Haran must have been 8 years old. That's the calculation. If Abraham is 10 years older than Sarah, right? So then he was 10 when she was born. But Haran, his brother, was 2 years younger than him. So he must have been 8 when she was born. Okay? So that's a proof that Haran was 8 years old, and that's why Bet Shammai said an 8-year-old can father a child, and therefore an 8-year-old's intercourse should be considered halachically significant. So the Gemara says, 1 second, how do you really know that Abraham is 2 years older? Perhaps Abraham was actually the youngest of his brothers. So why is he mentioned first in the pasuk? And the fact that he's written first in the pasuk is not because he was the oldest. The pasuk is not bringing down chronological order of the children. Rather, it's bringing down who was the wisest. And know this: that the psukim count the people by their wisdom. It says, "Vahi Noach mechamet hamesh me'ot shana." Noach is 500 years old. V'yolen Noach et Shem et Cham et Yafet, and he gave birth to Shem, Cham, and Yafet. Now, from this pasuk, you would think Shem gadol mi Ham shana, that Shem was a year older than Ham. The Ham gadol mi Yafet shana, and Ham was a year older than Yafet. Nimsa Shem gadol mi Yafet shtei. You would be that Shem is 2 years older than Yafet. But can this really be? Uchtiv, but it says next, Noach ben 600 shana v'mabu haya ma'im al haaretz, that Noach is 600 years old when the Mabul happened. Uchtiv, and it says, El Tidot Shem, Shem b'miyat shana b'yod al pachashad shnaitim achar Mabul. Then it says that Shem was 100 years old when he had his son Arpachshad, and he was 2 years after the Mabul. 1 second. B'miyat shana, he's 100 years old. He should be 102 because you said that Noah had his children, started having children at 500. And you listed Shem first, so Shem should be the first child. And then 100 years later was the Mabul. So he should have been 100 already when the Mabul happened. And you're telling me he had Arpachshad 2 years later, he should be 102. Why does the Pasuk say he's still 100? So rather, it's written Derech Chochmatan. And Shem is not really the oldest, he's actually the youngest. And the reason why he's written first is because he was the wisest. Hachinami, here too, Derech Chochmatan, Ki Hashiv Lahu. Really, here too, he's also bringing Abraham, Nachor, Haran, are not listed in chronological order, but rather by the wisdom. Says Tosfot, the second Tosfot on the page, El Derech Chochmatan Kechoshev, if you're really writing it in the order of Chachma, Tema Imkain, Lichshav Cham Livsaif. We should say Cham last. It should be Shem, Yefet, and Cham. Cham is the least wisest. Why is he in the middle? The Kachashav Shem Cham Yefet, and it says Shem Cham Yefet. Why is Cham in the middle? It says Tosfot. Cham should be at the end. Okay, Chum should be at the end. He's the least wisest. So what do we do? How do we explain this? Let's see if we have an answer here. So he brings over here in the Steinsaltz, he brings from the Rush. The primary factor was listing the wisest son, Shem, first. As he was also the youngest, the name of the reigning sons were listed in reverse chronological order. Meaning, the point of it was not listing everybody in their wisdom, but rather listing the first one as being the wisest, and then the rest in reverse chronological order, because Shem was the youngest. So that would answer Tosfot's question why Ham is second in this story over here. Okay, fine. So we don't have a proof here. We don't have a proof that Haran was actually 8 because Abraham may have been the youngest. So there's no proof. So where does Bet Shammai have his proof that an 8-year-old boy was able to father a child? And he says it's from Tanakh. He says it's from the Torah. Where do we have it? Rather, Utzalel ben Uri, Tzalel ben Uri ben Chur. We have Bitzalel, who's the son of Uri, who's the son of Chur, Lamata Yehuda. Uchtiv, and it says, and this is said in Divrei Hayamim, Betamot Azuva. There was a woman named Azuva, and she died. She was Eshet Kalev. She was the wife of Kalev. Ve'yikach lo Kalev et Efrat, and then he took a woman called Efrat, ve'teled lo Ehur, and he gave birth, and she gave birth to a boy called Chur. So what do we have? We have Kalev is the father of Chur. Chur is the father of Uri. Uri is the father of Bitzalel. Turns out that Kalev is the great-grandfather of Bitzalel. Now, before we move on, the Gemara tells us a very interesting idea. Who is this Azuva and who is this Ephrat? The Gemara says, same exact woman. Right? This is actually both of them are Miriam, and Miriam was very sickly, and she was called Azuva, right? Leave her alone. And then she had Sarat. Remember, and when a person has Sarat, they're considered as if they were dead, and so she died. And then when she got healed, she was called Ephrat. And so it's really he married the same person. It was the same person. This is what the Gemara in Sota tells us. Sota Yud Aleph Amid Bet. Shazuva of Ephraim Shnei Shemot Shel Miriam. Achot Moshe Varon. There were two names of Miriam. So we have that Miriam had two names, Azuba and Ephraim, but don't forget she also had Pua, right? Yocheved was Shifra and Pua, right? So she has a few names here. But Nekra Azuva, people didn't want to marry her. She was very sickly. Masha Mashimatan, then it says that she died. When she had Sarat, she considered as if she did. And when she became healed, and when that happened, Caleb took her back as a wife. And so this is really the same Miriam. Okay, so Miriam is the wife of Caleb. Caleb is the father of Chur. Chur is the father of Uri. Uri is the father of Betzalel. Now, V'chi avad Betzalel Mishkan bar kama habe. How old was Betzalel when he was working on the Mishkan? So the Gemara says, bar telasar. He was 13 years old. Dichtiv, because it says, ish ish melachto asher osim. It says when a man builds the Mishkan. And how old is a man? We know the halacha is the man is at 13. So he must have been 13. Betanyan was told in the Braita. Shana Rishona asa Moshe Mishkan. The first year in the desert, that's when Moshe made the Mishkan. So he was 13 years old during the first year of the desert. In the second year, they erected the Mishkan. It means after it was all built, they put it together. And they sent the Meraglim in the second year. And it says, where is this pasuk? This is also in this is in Yehoshua, this pasuk, that says, Caleb is speaking, and he says, Ben arba'im shana anuchi b'shloach Moshe Ebed Hashem. I was 40 years old when Moshe sent me as a spy to go see Eretz Canaan. V'ata hine anuchi hayom ben 85 shana. And today I am 85. He's talking to the people in the times of the charge of Yehoshua when they're in Eretz Yisrael. But what did he say? He was 40 years old when he went to spy. He's 40. And how old is Betzalel? In the second year. And we went in the second year and he's 40. And Betzalel in the second year was 14. So let's take a look. Take away 14 years from Betzalel. That means when Betzalel was born, Caleb, who was his great grandfather, Pashat Lahu Esrim Vishit, he was 26. So if you have 3 generations of 26, take away 2 years at least for the pregnancy, so you're up to 24. Every father had a child when he was 8 years old. Okay, so again we go back to our 8 years old. So what happened? The Caleb was 8 years and 8 months old when he had Chur. Chur was 8 years and 8 months when he had Uri, right? And that makes Caleb 17 years and 4 months old. And then Uri had Bitzalel another 8 years and 8 months, which turns out that Caleb is exactly 26 years old. So they're all given birth, impregnated women at 8. So you have a case of, based on this Tukim, you have a case where an 8-year-old was able to father a child, and therefore Bet Shammai says we have to be worried about this case, and therefore even today, even though it's not the reality, we will still look at an 8-year-old's bi'ah as halachically significant. Whereas Bet Hillel said, no, we look at the reality today. Reality today is that 9-year-olds could inseminate a woman, but they can't impregnate a woman. Therefore, a 9 years old would be considered biyah that is significant, but children they're not able to have children until they're 13. This we already saw last week. Okay,
what
now
does science say?
that's
Science,
now is reality. Say again.
9-year-old can inseminate a girl, a woman.
Right. So we said that he has semen, but his semen is not potent enough to impregnate. Right. That's what we said. It's there, but it's not mezid. It's not able to have children. That's what we said last week. Correct. Okay. So halacha is 9-year-old bi'ah is considered halachically significant, and if an older woman, right, someone who's already considered an adult, a gadol, a gedolah, and she had relations with a 9-year-old boy who's a katan, so all the isurim, she can get punished. If she had warnings, they would be able to kill her. If they have no warnings, she's at least possible, get makas, whatever it is. A 9-year-old's bi'ah is considered halachically significant. And where we saw a girl's bi'ah is already at 3 years old, already considered halachically significant. Okay, now we go back into the laws of ben sorer umoreh. First thing, in the Mishnah we had last week, we said ben velo bat, ben sorer moreh, right? Not bat sorer moreh. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Shimon, b'dinhu shetieh bat ru'ah liot keben sorer moreh. Truth is, says Rabbi Shimon, a girl should also be killed if she does sorer moreh, right? And even worse, because shahakom mitzuyin etzla ba'avera. She would want to what's it called, keep up her lifestyle, and she would start to practice harlotry. She would start to be a prostitute in order to get more money. So she should be a bat sorer moreh. Rather, it is the decree of the Torah, ben, son, not a daughter. Therefore, it doesn't apply to a daughter because it is Gezeret HaKetuv. Okay, now we start a new Mishnah. We're going to do a little bit of the Mishnah, a little bit of the Gemara, and then we'll call it a day. Some more qualifications of the halachot of Ben Sorer Moreh. We know he has to steal and then buy meat and wine and eat and drink it. How much does he have to eat and drink? Right? Misheyochal tartemar basar. He has to eat an amount of meat called a taratemar. We don't know exactly how much this is right now. We're going to see soon. V'yishteh hatzi log yayin ha'italki. And he drinks half a log of Italian wine. The Rambam, when he brings down the halacha, take a look at note 4, does not mention that a boy must drink Italian wine. You have to have a half a log, but doesn't talk about the Italian. It is possible, says the Kesef Mishnah in the Meiri, that the Rambam understands the Tana's choice of Italian wine to merely be illustrative of a fine wine, but not legally significant. So the Rambam said it doesn't have to be actually Italian wine. This is an example of some sort of a significant wine, right? If he's drinking cheap wine, we're not worried about that. I mean, he has to drink significant wine in order to become addicted to it. You're not going to become addicted to cheap wine. That's what they're saying. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Mana basar v'lo yain. Not teretama, but rather a mana of wine, and a whole a log of wine and a mana of basar. Aval b'chavurot mitzvah. Now the Gemara says some exceptions. Even if he stole and he brought his own meat and his own drink, and then he went and he ate it at a mitzvah ceremony, wedding, at a brit, whatever it was, he does not get punished as a ben sorer moreh. Achal be'ibur ha-chodesh. Achal b'chavurot mitzvah. Achal be'ibur ha-chodesh. If he ate it during a ceremony when they were adding a date to the month, also, someone related to a mitzvah, does not become ben sorer moreh. Achal nevelot u'teriot chekatzim urmasim. If he ate nevela, right? Nevela is an animal that died without shchita. Terefa, you shechted it, but it had a injury that it will die during the year. All these isurim. Shekatzim, abominable creature that you're not allowed to eat. Urmasim, creepy crawlers, right? They're not allowed to eat. And he ate any of these, he doesn't become a ben sorer moreh. Why? We're going to have to see later on in the Gemara, not today. But apparently when he does averot, when he eats them, he also doesn't become ben sorer moreh. Achal tevel. If he ate tevel, tevel is untithed produce. U'maser rishon shelo nitlat trumato. Or if he had meiser rishon that truma's meiser wasn't given. Right? U'meiser sheni v'hekdesh shelo nivdu. Or he took meiser sheni and hekdesh that wasn't redeemed. Wait, I skipped the line. Okay, let's go back. Mitzvah, if he ate it with a group that was doing a mitzvah, he doesn't get the din of ben sorer. If he eats it be'ibra chodesh, they're adding a day to the month. It's a mitzvah ceremony, and he eats it there. He doesn't get skila as ben sorer. If he took his father's meiser sheni, right? He stole either the money or he took the actual food and brought it to Yerushalayim and he bought food, or he actually ate that food in Yerushalayim. Right. Again, it has to be meat or wine. So either meiser sheni is the wine, or he took the money and he bought the meat and the wine. He doesn't become ben sorer moreh. It's related to a mitzvah. Nevilot, trefot, shekatzinu masim. Also, averot, you don't become ben sorer moreh. And now, in parentheses, achal tevel u'maser rishon shelo nitnat trumato. U'maser sheni v'hekdesh shelo nivdu. If he took any of these produces that are maaser or terumah, they need to be given, and he ate it, also does not become a ben sorer moreh. Why is this lines in parentheses in the Mishnah? So they explain. It's not really common to claim these words should be deleted from the Mishnah, as only produce such as grape from wine is made, and not meat is subject to tithing. You don't have any maaser and terumot by meat. Therefore, don't put this in the Mishnah. Others say, no, the Mishnah speaks to someone who stole tevel, sold them, and purchased wine and meat with the money. That's the me'idi. Others explain, we're not talking about meat here, we're just talking about the wine part. So you have the wine that was any of his produce, and he ate it. He does not become ben sorer moreh. Chal davar shu mitzvah, davar shu avera, or he ate something that was a mitzvah, or he ate something that was a sin to eat. We're going to see in the Gemara later on what this comes to include. But achal koma achal, below achal basar. If he ate everything else, but he didn't eat meat, fish, chicken, but he didn't eat meat. Shata koma shke v'lo shata yain, or he drank any beverage, but he did not drink wine. Eina said ben sorer moreh. He does not become a ben sorer moreh. Ad until sheyochal basar v'yishteh yain. He has to have eaten real basar, and he has to have drinking actual wine. Shneimar, because it says olel v'soveh, a glutton and a guzzler. Even though we don't have an actual proof that zolel means to eat meat and soveh means to drink wine, we have a zecher, because it says in pasuk in Mishlei, al tihi v'soveh yain bizlolei basar lamo. Be not among wine guzzlers and gluttonous eaters of meat. So here you see zolel v'soveh means wine and meat. Okay, that was the Mishnah. Let's do a little bit of the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Zera. Tartemar ze'eni yodeh mahu. When the Mishnah said the first opinion, he has to eat a tetamar of meat, we have no idea what that is. But take a look at the second opinion. Yossi says the wine is double the amount, not a half a log of wine, but rather a whole log of wine. So it must be that a tetamar is half a maneh, that he because he's doubling the amounts. That's what he says. And we talk kafel Rabbi Yossi beyayin inside tetamar hatzimata. So tetamar is half a maneh because everything is doubled. Whatever tetamar is, you add another one, and that comes a maneh. So half a maneh is a tetamar. Amar b'Hanan bar molda amarav huna. Eno chayav ad sheyikach basar bezol veyochal veyayin bezol veyishteh dichtel zolel vesoveh. He doesn't become hayav until he buys it cheaply. He buys nice wine and nice meat for cheap amounts. And the way they explain this in note 19, it is not so difficult to regularly steal enough money to buy low-priced meat and cheap wine. Hence, a boy who indulges in these things will habitually steal money to buy and thus become addicted. This eventually leading him to rob and murder to support his lifestyle. But it's not as easy to regularly steal enough money to buy expensive meat and fine wine. Therefore, we do not assume that a boy who indulges in these things will become addicted to that lifestyle. He has to be able to buy it on sale, right? Because it's going to be easier to steal less amount of money to do what you want to do. If he has to make a whole operation to get the big money, it's going to be much harder for him. Therefore, he won't become addicted to that lifestyle, says Rav Huna. And Amr Chanan Bar Molda, Amr Huna. Okay, we did this one. Oh, Einu Chayv Ad Sheyochal Basar Chai V'Yishte Yain Chai. He has to have eaten raw meat and drinking raw wine. Versus, is this really so? V'Har Rabba Rav Yosef Amr Tervayu. Agol Basar Chai V'Shata Yain Chai. Einu Nase Ben Somer. We said no, opposite. If he drinks raw wine and he eats raw meat, he won't become addicted to it. Therefore, he does not become Saramar. It doesn't taste good. So he's not going to become addicted to it. He won't become Ben Saramar. Ravina says, yeah, Yain Chai Mazik V'Loi Mazik. It's raw wine, but it's not completely undiluted. I mean, it's somewhere in between. Basar Chai, Bashal V'Loi Bashal. It's raw meat, but it's cooked, but it's not cooked. Kivasar Kiba de Achle. Like scorched meat that thieves eat, meaning they cook it somewhat. If it's completely raw, no, he doesn't become in some way. But if it's cooked somewhat, he does become a sorer moreh. Rabbi Rav Yosef the Amrit Tarvayu. Achal basar maliyah v'shata yain megito. The boy ate salted meat and drank wine fresh from the wine press. Eno naseh ben sorer moreh. He does not become ben sorer moreh. Again, fresh wine does not taste good, and salted meat does not taste good. The person won't become addicted to it. Tenan, Hatam, we learned there in the Mishnah. Again to Tisha B'Av here. We do not eat two cooked foods at the Tisha B'Av last Suda Mafseket. We don't eat meat and we don't drink wine. From the Talmud, the only time it's also to eat meat or drink wine is Erev Tisha B'Av, not during the whole 9 days. That's already a whole minhag. Ashkenazim stuff from Rosh Chodesh. We Sephardim minhag is the day after Rosh Chodesh. But they're actually Temanim until today that they don't hold of this. They say the Talmud says you can't eat meat or wine on Erev Tisha B'Av Suda Mafseket. And therefore some Temanim till today eat meat and drink wine during the 9 days, just not Erev Tisha B'Av during the Suda Mafseket. And that is actually the halacha that's brought down in the Talmud. That we can't change our minhag. Our minhag is already the day after Rosh Chodesh, but it such exists. Tana, and it was taught you can't eat meat or wine, right? On Erev Tisha B'Av second. Aval ochel, but he could eat basar maliach, salty meat on Erev Tisha B'Av. V'shota yain migito, and he can drink wine that came straight from the press. Basar maliach at kamo. How long can he eat this salted meat? How long after it was salted? As long as he remembers the shlomin offering. Meaning if it's within 2 days and 1 night, it's not considered salted, and it may not be eaten at the Suda Mafseket. because it's not considered salted yet. You have to let it salt for 2 days and a night. So if it's within that time, you cannot eat it on Erev Tisha B'Av. It's not considered salted meat. But yain migato at kama. And how long is it wine fresh from the press? Kozman shehu toses. As long as it's still fermenting. V'hatanya yain toses en bo mishum gilui. In fact, is that fermenting wine, there's no worried about gilui. What gilui mashkim is that you're not allowed to leave uncovered drinks because perhaps a snake will come and put its venom in there. However, wine that's still fermenting, we're not worried about it being uncovered because the snakes won't come to it. And how long does the fermentation last? 3 days. So within those 3 days, you're allowed to drink that wine on Erev Tisha B'Av because it is fermenting, and you cannot, and it's not considered salted meat until 2 days after it's been salted. Hachamai, what's the story about a Ben Soda Moreh? When we say that he does not become a Ben Soda Moreh if he ate salted meat and he drank fresh wine. Is it the same definition as Tisha B'Av? Mara says no. Hatam mishum simchahu. By Tisha B'Av, the reason why you cannot eat non-salted meat because it brings simcha meat. Kozman kush shamim. As long as it remembers the shlamim and hasn't been salted with 2 days, nami it simcha. It's salty, but it still will bring you simcha. Hacha mishum imshuchehu. But here by the boy, the whole reason salted meat is not going to make him addicted to it. So any meat, any salt, even 1 day, even 1 minute, small amount of time, as long as there's some salt in it, you won't become addicted to it. It doesn't taste so good. You're not going to come. It can bring you simcha, but it won't make you addicted. But yayin and wine, although on Erev Tisha B'Av you can only drink fresh wine that is 3 days from when it was fermented. But for a boy to become considered addicted to it, until 40 days. As a boy eats meat that was salted overnight or drink wine that's less than 40 days, he does not become a Zen Soda Moreh because the addictive powers are not that strong. Okay? Before we end off, let's just take a look at the halacha for a moment in the Libid Hilchasa about these qualifications. Let's see if he brings anything here. Halacha mipia kabbalah. Chen chai skila ach yignov. We're going to see this landing more. Ach yignov Michel Aviv. He has to steal from his father. V'yikne basar bezul v'yayin bezul. And he has to buy on sale basar, and he has to buy inexpensive wine. V'yochel basar chai v'eino chai. If it's halfway raw and not halfway raw, mivushal v'eino mivushal. Kederch sha'ganavim ochlim. ויש יין מזוג כדרך שהגרגנים שותים, הוא שיאכל משקל 50 דינרים מבשר זה, בלוגמה אחת ויש חצי לוג מיין, זה בבת אחת, שותה כל משקה ולא ישתה יין פוטר. So he has to have that meat. He has to have that chatzi lug and the titamar of meat. And it has to be half raw, half not raw, right? It has to be. That's when he becomes a chayiv skila. But he drinks every drink except wine. He's potter. She's a mikruhu. Was that person can't do this forever? Drink such raw stuff. Or shata yain migazo potter. Shein adam yochel hamshich bezeh. Haita achila mitzvah. A few medivreihem. Or achilas avera, a few medivreihem potter. Even if it's rabbinic mitzvah or rabbinic avera, he's not going to become ben sar and mora. Because okay, we'll get into that more, but it looks like all these halachot that we brought down are applicable, and so therefore you can understand how the case of a ben sorer moreh was very, very rare, and that's why perhaps it never actually happened, because in order to fulfill all the criteria, it would be very hard. Okay, we'll end at this time if there are any questions. Very good. Okay, Shavua Tov.
You received my payment?
I did. Thank you very much.
Good. All right, thank you. Shavua Tov. Tonight, class 8:30?
Be'ezat Hashem. Yes, I'll put the post up.
All right.
Thank you.